Hello everybody, Arash Salehi is here and with Anatomy Sculpting Studios, and today's topic is hands. So I started with a sphere, and after that I tried to flatten out a bit, and as you see here, the palm of the hand is almost a square shape, and the place that the thumbs comes out of that is almost half of this edge. You just need to divide it by half and extrude the thumb out of that. And when you are extruding the thumb, it shouldn't be completely straight. If this is the side of the palm, the thumb goes in this way, and there is a 30 almost degree here for a thumb. And constantly I'm looking from top, front and side. The other thing that I need to mention here, when I'm looking from the top views, we need to have a nice curve here for the fingers. For the pinky one, it goes more back in comparison to the other ones, and then the middle finger is in front of the other ones in this arc. And from the front view, if you look at this arc, we have the same thing in the front view too. You need to have a great arc from both top and front view, and the thumbs comes out of here this way. Okay. Usually I extrude one of the fingers, and I try to make a rough shape of a finger and a good shape of that, and after that I extrude it and cut and duplicate it and make the other fingers. Okay, the other things that I want to talk here, if you see, I made two oval shapes here. This is because of the shape of the bones. Usually it's the classic shape of the bone is like this when you want to draw it, and we have bones here. It connects these two to here, and there is another bone here. So at the beginning I try to emphasize on its bony landmarks, and after that when I smooth it out, although it's not that much exaggerated, but it's visible that there is a bone there, because the hands are made up of fat pads mostly and bones. So you need to make sure to emphasize on these parts. And for the first knuckle, it's more like a diamond shape when I wanted to sculpt it. But for this, the second and the third, I try to make two oval shape and emphasize on that and connect them with a straight line. And on the bottom, I started to add the fat pads. And remember, the fat pads for each knuckle and each section is not the same. Usually the fat pad for the middle part, of the finger, is more flatter in comparison to the beginning. And here, this fat pad usually is flatter. If you want to draw a finger from the side view, let's draw something. This is the finger, and this one is like this. This one a little bit flatter, and the third one, this way, it goes this way, and the third one is more rounder, but here there is a flat space and it attaches to a fat pad underneath. And the knuckle that we have on the top, first knuckle is here, and the beginning of the first fat pad is for ahead of that knuckle. We can draw an angular line to connect these two. the relationship between this fat pad on the bottom and the knuckles on the top is usually like this. The middle one is completely straight. The division between these two fat pads is aligned up with the knuckle, but for the first knuckle, then the third knuckle is a little bit forward, and the division of the fat pads and correspond to that is behind, but for the first knuckle is a little bit ahead. Remember this nice gesture. So yeah, I am smoothing out. They are not that much prominent when I start to sculpt with the knuckles, but you have a feeling of that bone there underneath of the skin. And here, there is its important muscles and tendons. We need to talk about it. There are two tendons. This is, imagine the first knuckle of this thumb. This is the second knuckle. From here, we have two tendons, one this way, the other one this way. They call it extensor, pollicis brevis and longus. 1, 2. Okay, this is number 2. This one, and this is number 1. These two tendons very obvious on the skin. Some people, and in some people that is not so much visible, but if you touch it, you can feel it because there is very close to the surface of basically it's the skin, and you can touch it. But in some people, it's very obvious here, and it creates indentation here. And pollicis means thumb in anatomy language. If you learn that words that related to anatomy, you can understand basically and memorize the muscles, tendons easier, and the relationship between them. Some of them is really hard, I know, but if you try to write it down and remember the name of the anatomy terms, it helps you to understand the anatomy much easier. And the other things that I want to talk when we are here, there is a muscle here. There is an important muscle here, and it makes a bulge. Let's create it like this. Okay, create a bulge shape here, and it connects. If this is the knuckle, it goes all the way a little bit ahead of that, and it connects to the base of the first bone of the index finger. They call it proximal phalanges. It connects to the base of that, and here it attaches to that the first metacarpal, which is related to the thumb. Here it goes all the way, and in some articulation of your hands, it pops up very obviously. And the name of that is interosseous. Let me write it down for you. If I'm right, interosseous osseous muscle. Interosseous muscle. Okay. Again, the same thing for the bone of the thumb. To oval shape for each knuckle, and smooth it out. As I'm going forwards, I notice what part of the hands proportion is off, and I need to fix it based on the landmarks that I place on the surface. And here we have some muscles here for the thumb. If this is the first knuckle of the thumb on the top, this muscle just starts from here and they go here, they make it mass here, and they call this part, this mass, Thenar eminence. Thenar again means, if I'm right, thumb, related to the thumb muscle, and they start from the lateral. Lateral means outside. This part is lateral, this part is medial part of the thumb. Start from the lateral side and they attach to the base of the proximal phalanges of the thumb. This is the first bone here. They attach here and they make a round shape. And there is another muscle that connects to the medial side of the thumb, and is this one, and it goes all the way to here, and it's triangular shape and it's flat. And this one is called adductor. Adductor policies, if I'm right. Adductor policies. Adductor are the muscles that bring that limb or that part of the body towards another part or center of the body. Because these muscles helps the thumb move towards that and rotates towards the other fingers, they call it adductor. We have other muscles that some of these muscles are here called abductor. Abductor muscles are the muscles that basically push it and pull it away, that finger, the limb of the body, or whatever they are connected to. And this is for this part. And when you are sculpting the palm of the hand, let me change the color. With this color. Okay. When you're sculpting the palm of the hand, make sure that just this part is round. This part should be flatter. Don't make all the way basically a huge bump here. Okay, I'm making the wrist a little bit wider. And there is another basically bump in this part. It's called hypothenar eminence on the other side. It's related to the pinky finger. See, this part is flat. The part beside that is more rounder. Okay, here we have two fat pads here. Let me show you guys. The first fat pad starts from here and goes to here. This is one piece on the top. The other part is this part related to the other three fingers. These two pieces, and usually a little bit indentation between them, very gentle. And there is other things here on the palm. Is this triangle. This is another flat area that you need to consider that, and don't add anything there. Constantly looking at that hand from different angles. See, right now the triangular in between is more obvious. It's a flat area. And the two fat pads on the top. And usually there is a triangular indentation on the bottom too. Adding the fat pads underneath of the thumb. Usually when you are sculpting the thumb, if you would make this part a little bit wider and make this kind of shape, wedge shape, you can sell the shape of the thumb much easier because it makes a better silhouette. And here should be a little bit round and bulgy, and it goes all the way toward the thumb, and this part should be straight and narrower in comparison to that part. If you start to draw from the hand, it helps you to understand the forms and shapes better, and you can sculpt the hand much easier. And the thing that I'm sculpting right now here is part of the adductor muscle that I told you guys. And this is the skin fold a little bit. And this definition is related to interosseous muscle that we talked before. Here, these tendons, make sure you have a very straight shape here and a little bit bump because of the knuckle here, and again straight, and the wedge shape that we talked about it here. And this is the interosseous muscle. It comes toward here. This is the muscle, and this part that you see is related to the adductor muscle of the thumb. Emphasizing on these two tendons. These two tendons that goes this way, extensor pollicis longus and extensor pollicis brevis. The brushes that I use mostly for sculpting hand or a lot of stuff are clay buildup, move brush, standard, demi-standard, sometimes edge polish. I really like edge polish too, and the other brush that I really like it too, inflate brush. Yes, inflate brush. Inflate brush is good. So right now, see, I duplicate that. How I did that? Basically, I use the 3D gizmo and holding control. When I holding control and dragging, it creates a new copy of that. But right now I duplicate the model. Sorry, but you can't do that right now. I will do the same technique that I told you guys. Control and drag. See, it it masks the original one, and it creates a duplicate of that in the same subtool. I use it for fingers. See? The same subtool, but we're creating more fingers. 3D gizmo tool, control, and move. Right now I'm making different polygroups, so it makes it easier for me later to hide one of the fingers if I want to work on it maybe individually and focus on one finger at a time. It's very important to have polygroups for your fingers when you're sculpting a hand. Again, looking from the front view to have that nice arc that we talked at the beginning. Fixing proportions using move tool. And adductor pollicis muscle. Fixing the proportions. See, I was measuring here. Okay, see, I changed my 3D gizmo to this, basically it's an old version of this transpose tool by hitting Y. When you hit any of the WER keys on keyboard, and after that hit Y, it switches to this one, the old version of that. And I usually use this one for measuring different parts when I'm sculpting hand or face to see everything is working or not. right now the same arc applies on the palm of the hand too. When I have all of my fingers there and I am sure about the proportions and I'm sure that proportion is working, I try to pose the hand and fingers in a relaxed mode. And the best reference for that is my own hand. I look at my own hand to see how it looks like in that relaxed pose. Moving each, rotating and moving each knuckle of each finger individually to achieve the result that I'm looking for. So when you're sculpting hands, head, or whatever part of the body that even it's an arm, is good to sculpt a little bit one part of the other part that is connected to that. For example, if you're sculpting hand, it's good to sculpt a little bit of the forearm. If you're sculpting head, it's good to sculpt a little bit of the neck and chest. If you're sculpting arm, a little bit of chest. So this bony part that you see I sculpted here is the head of that ulna. It comes to here and it gradually fades here around. It's not on the side, it's not on the top, it's in between. Remember that. Thenar eminence. Again, ulna and the head of ulna. Making more definition. The palm of the hand using the diamond standard brush and using a standard brush and labeled up to emphasize on the tendons of the tongue. Okay, so I use this clip curve brush to make that end of that basically the section of forearm flat and nice. I'm emphasizing on the knuckles here. The other thing that I want to talk about it here is about the measurement of the and the proportion of the fingers. Usually from here to the end, the first knuckle to the tip of the finger, if you divide it by half, you will reach to that first knuckle, and if you divide it by 70% of this part, the first part, this part, you will reach to the second knuckle, and again 70% of the second distance you will reach to the tip of the finger. So this is for the half, this is the other half, these two, but this one is almost 3/4 and 3/4 of the previous one, 3/4 of this one, 3/4 of this one. It applies to all of the fingers, remember that. Usually there is a definition between hypothenar eminence and the top of the hand. I try to make that indentation and definition there. Okay. Make this part a little bit more even, although this part is flatter in comparison to here, but Want to make here a little bit more even. Adding fat pads, and do not, although I sculpted on this fat pad at the beginning, but sculpting a character or whatever, you need to be patient, and sometimes you need to do reiteration several times to achieve the result that you're looking for. Right now I'm going for the fat pads. If you look at here, this is basically the middle part, but I didn't completely make one piece out of that. There is a small indentation in between these two, because when the fingers are at the bends, they make a little bit bulge between each knuckle, separation of each knuckle. So because of that we have these bulges here, and here usually for the middle part a little bit indentation here. You need to look at the characteristic of each of these fat pads. They are not the same. If you sculpt it the same, your finger look like a sausage, and you don't want that. Even though for the first part I did the same thing for the fat pads. It has a little bit break between that end and the beginning of the fat pad. Emphasizing on the bone here, on the top part. And again, see, polygroups help me to basically hide the other parts and just focus on one finger. It's very important to have polygroups for your fingers, different polygroups for each finger. The diamond shape that we talked before for the first knuckle. A little bit emphasizing on the parts that the nails will be. Right now I'm going to one of the important parts that some people, specifically the beginners, miss, that the webbings between the fingers. On the top there is indentation between the fingers, but from the bottom and the palm of the hand, they're connected to each other. Whenever I sit, there is a bad plane changes or something is not working, there is indentation, there is a weird bump. Instead of using the move tool, I prefer to sculpt and use the clay buildup, because at the end I figure out that the result is more believable and more artistic. It's good to use the move brush for just the big moves, for making the shapes. But for the small parts, when I want to push them in or pull them out, I prefer to sculpt them and draw some stroke off and some passes of stroke off the clay buildup to achieve the result that I want. For this specific hand that I'm sculpting here for you guys, I try to emphasize on most of the part of the hand so you can see that. In some hands, specifically for female hands, these bony landmarks and a lot of other things that we have here prominently, they are very subtle, and maybe you cannot see them, but still they are there. if you know the basics and the fundamentals and what is underneath of the skin, later you can change it and make different type of hand. Female hand, male hand, old people's hands, or even a stylized one. See, the fat pads has their own characteristic, they are not the same. And the webbing part and the folds on the palm side, emphasizing on the tendons of the thumb. Constantly when I'm working, because I put different landmarks, when I see that the proportions is not working, I use move brush to make big changes, again for big changes. For small changes, I prefer to use that clay build-up and sculpt it. I felt the thumb was too high, I masked it and used it. See, right now I'm bringing it more down because it was too. Previously I showed you guys it should have almost a 30-degree angles in comparison to the basically palm of the hand. And the last finger, last two fingers, trying to fix them. If you make a good and acceptable hand, and later if you have time and do a good make a good topology for that, you can easily import them into your different projects and you don't need to start to sculpt the hand from scratch. But sculpting hands, sometimes for different characters, if you have time, that's a good practice to basically test your skill sets and muscle memory to see do you remember everything that you did the last time or not. Sometimes, every often I try to start to sculpt hand from scratch for my characters, but sometimes I just import them and use the hands that I have. Right now I'm adding a little bit folds that they come and they generate around this on the bottom of the pinky finger, and they are obvious from the side view. And here, because I didn't have first good topology because of the dynamish, and the second thing, I didn't have enough resolution, I couldn't work that much on webbing part to achieve the details that they have. Revising the fat pads for this finger to make sure it matches with my reference, which is my own hand. We talked about the proportion of the fingers from the top view, but from the bottom view, when you look at them, they are almost the same, these three parts, for all of the fingers. Why? Because as we talked before, that separation of this part for the first knuckle is a little bit ahead of that first knuckle. The first knuckle is around here on the top, and for this one, the knuckles, the last knuckle is here almost. So because of that, this is a little bit closer to the middle ones, and this one is a little bit shorter, so this distance of these 3 fat pads is usually the same from the bottom view. And sometimes it's good to look at your hands upside down, because since the beginning till now we were working on the other side, but when you look at it upside down you see the flaws and the parts that are not working, and you couldn't see them when you were looking them from the top to bottom view. And you can apply the same thing that I'm saying here to the other things that you are sculpting. Even you are sculpting a head, a body. When you flip it, you can see that something is working, some parts are not working, and you didn't see them before. Emphasizing an abductor muscle fold that it creates there. I felt that the pinky finger was a little bit tiny and small. I made it bigger. And the interosseous muscle here again. So we have more interosseous muscle between each fingers, but the one that is more prominent, that is important to us, is between the thumb and the index finger. Right now I started to create the nails using diamond standard to create the border of them, and using the clay buildup to create that. That's one of the important things about the nails. You need to make sure that you look at them from front, top and side view. From front view, you should have a shape like this. They're curved. They are not flats. Make sure you have this shape and a little bit thickness. That's very important. And from the top view, it's usually like this. Again, round shape in the front and round shape in the back. And from the side view, when you look at them, it's usually like this. And this is the side of that, basically. This is the midst of the hand and the finger, and this is the nail. Remember that these arcs, let me draw it at another color, so make sure you see that. See? This one, this one, this one, and here. From the side view is almost triangular shape. Okay. After drawing the borders with diamond standard and lazy mouse, I come again and start to sculpt him with clay buildup and move brush if I need to correct the shape. And the fingers, the nails, the fingernails, usually if this is the last knuckle and this is the tip of the finger, the fingernails, it starts and begins from the half of this part. If you divide this part from the last knuckle to the tip of the finger, usually it should be roughly start from the half of it. And that's it. This is the final result. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something out of that.